First of all, before we get into the video, I just want to say a very big thank you to all of you for 20k subscribers. I've been doing YouTube for almost a year now, with my first video being uploaded on September 28th of last year, and I never imagined that the channel would grow to this point a year ago, so from the bottom of my heart, I thank all of you for taking the time out of your day to watch, comment, subscribe, and just overall support the channel. You're all amazing. Now then, a highly requested video has been a tier list, so that's what I'm doing today. I would like to quickly give out some disclaimers before I begin. Firstly, this tier list is nothing more than my opinion, and it's very likely there will be characters whose placing you disagree with. That's okay, but I ask you to be respectful about it and not scream for bloody murder. To expand upon this, my perspective is entirely made from my experience playing on PS5, as I have not played this game on any other platform. This is also a team game where your teammates can add further to your character's strength and cover your character's weaknesses, so for that reason I believe every character is more than viable. That being said, I'm mainly thinking of the character's individual strength and weaknesses when placing them on the list. I'm also just primarily focusing on putting the characters in the tier I believe they belong in and not so much the order. I might fix up the ordering at the end, but for now just focus on what tier I put the characters in and not so much their order. With the disclaimers out the way, let's get into it. As you can see, the tiers I have are S, A, A-, and B. I added A- as I had a lot of characters in A tier and I wanted to group them better, and B is the lowest tier as I feel no character is lower than that. The tiers reflect the strength and weaknesses of the character as an individual, with S having high strengths and low weaknesses, and B having very apparent weaknesses. I'll be going in the order the tier list has them lined up in, so first up is Aizawa, who I'm putting in A tier. Now then, Aizawa was a very easy A tier to me. His moves all hit very hard, and he has a lot of mobility to back them up. Obviously, Aizawa adds a lot to the team in the form of his alpha. His alpha can be used to hold people down in place so your teammates can combo. Some characters can also combo with his gamma as well. And obviously, we have his special action that can hide the quirks of anyone he looks at, basically allowing your team to be aggressive and not have to worry about the enemies aggressing them back. And he has very hard-hitting combos that he can do on individual characters, as you can see right here. Now then, this character has been plagued with bugs since Season 1, the most notorious being his alpha bug, where his alpha will stop working and stop pulling enemies in. Despite this though, I think Aizawa fits very strongly in A tier. Next up, we have All For One, who is going to be the first character in A-. AFO got nerfed in some big ways this patch that has him falling further down my tier list. His beta is still an amazing move that does good damage and also allows his teammates to combo with, and his gamma still creates a very large amount of pressure, forcing enemies to roll and avoid going airborne. That being said, his main combo was nerfed quite severely. He can no longer do gamma into beta into alpha as it applies knockback. You can't get multiple alphas afterwards. His alpha also became weaker to the uncharged and the charged variant, and the nerf to his special action was also quite severe, with you now no longer being able to quickly cycle off of a quirk that you swap to. Not only can he no longer refresh his cooldowns, but now he's locked into a potentially low-level quirk for a set amount of time. Despite this, just the combos that he can bring to his team keeps him decently high into my list. Now we have All Might, who is the first character I'm putting in S tier. This character honestly has a little bit of everything, but he does it all very well. He has a high damaging alpha along with a high damaging beta that you can actually combo off of with some more alphas. His beta is just really good for mobility and it's hyper armor as well, so you can't be stopped. Not to mention his tornado as well is invincible to majority of attacks, so it's useful for stalling. And he has an instant res with a special action, but he also has just very good movement as well, which combined with his beta lets him traverse very far. The alpha also has splash damage, allowing you to get consistent damage. His splash damage can even hit enemies through walls, as you can see right here. He did receive a nerf to his HP, but even despite that, this character is just still a phenomenal character to utilize. Next is Assault Deku, who is going in A-. Yellow Deku is obviously the beginner character of the game, and as such, he has a little bit of everything. His alpha hits decently hard, not to mention you can increase the damage with a snipe shot. His beta has high armor and does a lot of damage as well, and his gamma can be used to pull enemies in to go into a combo of some sorts. Not to mention alongside his beta is his only form of mobility. The main thing about this character is he's very resource dependent, as getting his gamma to level 9 for the second gamma charge is kind of a must. And you also want to obviously try to get his alpha as well to high level to do decent damage. Besides that, again, he's basically an all-arounder. He has a little bit of everything, but he doesn't necessarily do anything crazy good. Strike Deku is the first quirk set that I'm placing, and I'm putting him in S tier. I feel like this placing shouldn't be too much of a surprise. This character can do very good damage, and he can do it from decently far away. His alpha, when scoped in, can hit for 210 damage at mid-range. Then obviously we have his beta, which he gets 3 of at level 9, also doing a very good damage to opponents. Not to mention the AoE of it gets bigger based on your height, so you can really get very easy hits with the beta from just doing it from above. His gamma as well does very decent damage, can even be comboed with his beta. Now then, as you can see right here, this character actually has 350 HP, 50 more HP than his assault variant. He also has 2 gammas at level 1, giving him decent mobility. While the gamma doesn't necessarily take him very far, it can take him very high up, which is very useful. Now then, I do see 2 weaknesses with this Deku though. Obviously his beta, no hyper armor, his gamma also no hyper armor, and it has kind of a long activation time as well. meaning it's easy enough to get hit out of both of them. That being said, I think his overwhelming attack power just kind of overshadows those weaknesses. Strike Shigaraki is next, and he is going right in A-. Strike Shigaraki is easily one of the best late-game characters in the game, with his alpha and beta doing very good damage and covering a lot of range. He also has the ability to bypass the opponent's shields and hit them directly to their HP, which is very strong. That being said, a lot of characters have mobility, can very easily attack it from above, and Strike Shigaraki has no ways of hitting people who are above him. He can use his alpha like so to hit people who are standing above him, but if they're airborne, he has no way of hitting them. And while he is very good in the late game, his early game is not that great. When you don't have a level 9 alpha and a level 9 beta, you can notice the damage trade off, and you can also notice just the area of effect of your attacks as well is not nearly as amazing as it is at level 9. Once he gets those level 9s and makes it to the late game, he's quite a monster, but vice versa, early game, he's kind of weak and feels very easy enough to pick off. Assault Shigaraki is the next of the quirk sets on the list, and he's going right in S tier. Now, this one might be a little bit shocking with how high up he is in the list, but I just feel like he's always been a phenomenal character. His alpha is by no means the easiest move to roll, his beta is a stun, his gamma is a stun, you can use them to combo and go into massive damage. His cooldowns as well, when you use all the moves, don't feel too bad, so you can go into his combo, use up all of your cooldowns, do decent damage to people, and you actually get the moves back decently quick. Not to mention, he has his passive bonus as well, where he's slowly ticking at the opponent's HP from landing his gamma and beta. And this will spread to numerous opponents as well, making opponents lose more HP than they realize over time. His gamma is a decent mobility tool that he can use to traverse, not to mention he can also hit opponents through walls as well by holding it down. I just feel like he has a lot of options. He can make the ground a living hell for people with the alpha. Obviously, he can use his gamma to hit people and stun people, even airborne people as well. Even if he's not necessarily hitting you, if he's hitting your teammates with the gamma or beta, he will spread decay to you, and that's going to slowly tick away at your HP as well. I just feel like he just has a lot going for him. Cementoss is next, and he's going right to A tier. This character honestly feels like he's playing a different game with his ability to just tower up like this and just immediately get high ground over people and make a very strong fortress. His moves actually do decent damage with him being able to combo his alpha and gamma together as well. His beta as well does very good damage, and as you can see at high levels, all of his moves are just like giant structures he can conjure up. So a lot of times when fighting a Cementoss, it just kind of feels like he's flooding the battlefield with a bunch of structures and making things more chaotic than they have to be. This character also has a very strong strength in the form of his instant res that he can do from long range. I feel like the only weakness he really does have is the fact that you kind of more or less know where he's always going. He doesn't have horizontal movement, all he has is vertical movement, so it's very easy if you do have mobility to just find Cementoss by looking up and using your mobility to chase him down vertically. Tech Dabi is going to be the first character that I put in B tier. Now Tech Dabi is this low because while I feel he's very strong indoors, I feel like there's just so many ways to counter him. His gamma, for example, can be beaten out by others' attacks. Characters with mobility can also just very easily go above his gamma like so and just hit him from above. And obviously every character can very simply just roll straight through it and hit him. His traps can also be seen by just getting closer to them, not to mention you can shoot them with projectile and also roll them at the last second to avoid getting hit. His alpha also doesn't really do too much damage, especially at the early levels. Again, I feel like he shines greatly by locking down buildings, but this also means he relies a lot on opponents actually pushing into his buildings. Now, obviously, a lot of people underestimate this character, so a lot of people will actually rush in and get hit by trap after trap after trap. So he may be getting a lot of damage from his traps, but he can't necessarily capitalize off of it himself, because if the opponent decides to run away, he has no way of chasing them down. Not to mention, if he doesn't have a building he can necessarily lock down, again, his gamma has a very big weakness by just easily being able to roll inside, attack from above. Some characters can just attack straight through it. So out in the open, his gamma, it's not that much of a defensive tool as he probably would like it to be. He does have some interesting tech that he can utilize, so as you can see here, we use the gamma point blank and hit the opponent for 100 damage. But if you activate a rapid card before doing the gamma, you'll actually end up doing more damage. Outside of his gamma, despite being a technical character, this character does not have very good cooldowns. Obviously, I'm sure they don't want people just spamming his traps and spamming his homing orbs left and right, but the way that his cooldowns are set up right now, you are very severely punished for using all of your alpha shots and using all your traps as well. I feel like other characters don't really have to think too much about their cooldown usage, but with Dabi, you have to think more so about how you're using your attacks. Now, on paper, Dabi's special action is amazing because it lets him self-revive. However, this special action has numerous weaknesses. First off, he cannot use it while being damaged, and he also can't use it in the storm as well. If Dabi gets hit while he activates his special action as well, it will actually bug out. So as you'll see here, I'm going to have Deku shoot me, and then I'm going to activate the special action as it happens, and you can see we're actually bugged. The special action activated, but we're still on the ground, and we can't do the special action again and get up. Now, Strike Dabi, on the other hand, I'm putting in S tier. Now, Strike Dabi is very high on the list because just like Strike Deku, he is a damage fiend. He has one of the easiest guard break combos in the game. Simply activating your Gamma, timing the mini explosion with your Beta, leads into massive damage that also leads into a guard break more often than not. His Alpha also has very good range when used within his Gamma. His Gamma will activate periodically, but it also activates by taking damage, meaning melee-based characters like Iida will get punished just for hitting him. The Gamma also granting him a speed boost is a very big buff, but also the grab as well, having very good tracking, very good range, makes it very hard to avoid as well. Honestly, the main two weaknesses of this character is if you do grab somebody and you're not really thinking too much about it, you will get punished severely because you can't end that animation soon, so that person's teammates could melt you. And also, it's very hard to be full HP with this character. His Gamma, just activating his Gamma does 30 damage to you, and then it's periodically taking down 2 damage as well. So Strike Dabi is almost never at full HP. Despite that though, I think this character's overwhelming strength outweighs his weaknesses, so for that reason I have him this high up. Kaminari is next, and he's going straight into A-. Kaminari is a very good mid to close range strike character with all his moves doing very good damage. He also has access to some very good combos as well. Gamma into Alpha does very good damage. Gamma into Beta does very good damage as well. It allows you to hit multiple people at once. His special action is a little bit underwhelming, basically being his Gamma but without the lunge to it, so you have to rush people yourself to stun them. It is useful against melee characters like Iida though. If you have an Iida attack you with the Alpha while your special action is active, he actually will end up stunning himself, so it's kind of a defensive tool against melee characters. The lines he can create from his Alpha are also very useful. They also stun very quickly, thanks to a recent buff. Honestly, his biggest weakness will probably be his range and speed. He doesn't really have a fast way of closing the gap on people to better connect his Gamma or Beta. He kind of has to approach them kind of slowly. His Alpha may be pretty good, with it getting more range by scoping in. If you keep shooting without aiming in, you have limited range. By scoping in, you get more. But I feel like it's easy enough just zoning this character out more often than not. Now we have Endeavor, who I'm putting in A tier. Endeavor to me has always been a very phenomenal character. His Alpha has always done a very good damage. His Beta as well is a very good get off me tool. Not to mention you can combo his Beta with his Alpha to do even more damage. It's just, this character also just does insanely good damage. His Gamma as well is also very useful. While they did tone it down from what they made the change to earlier, it still hits enemies through walls and hits numerous people as well. The main thing holding Endeavor back is the fact that one, he has a very big model, so it's very easy hitting him with attacks, I feel like. And he's also a pretty slow character. His jump is very floaty. His special action as well doesn't really take him too far. He can't really use his special action necessarily to run. Trying to dash away just results in you dashing in a very linear pathing, making it easy enough to hit you. His special action in my eyes is just more so a very good repositioning tool, not so much a tool useful for escaping a situation. The first rapid for the tier list is Iida, who I'm putting in A tier. Now Iida's pretty high on the list because obviously he's a rapid character, so his mobility is very good. But his damage output is also very good thanks to the combos he can do. He also has a very good armored move in the form of his Beta, which does have decent tracking. And again, thanks to his Gamma, he has a very good movement that he can utilize to traverse the map very easily. His attacks, even with the tracking, aren't necessarily the hardest move to dodge. You can dodge them simple enough with a roll. And obviously, he can use his special action to pick up down teammates and run them away and instant-res them somewhere safe. I feel like this character just has enough strengths that make me feel comfortable putting him in A tier. Now we have Kendo, who I'm putting in A-. Kendo is honestly much stronger than I would have expected her to be in a game like this. Her two attacking moves, Alpha and Gamma, both hit very hard. She also has numerous combos and setups that she can go for, leading to more damage. And she has a pretty good run speed as well. She also has her shield on top of her run speed that allows her to close the gap more safely on people. And this shield can also be used to counter melee characters, stopping them in their tracks, allowing her to go into a combo. Now, even with the run speed and also the shield to help close the gap, I feel like the biggest weakness of hers is just being zoned out, because she has to get close so that her rocks can do anything. And I feel like a lot of characters just have ways of disengaging off of her, and her chase down pressure, while she is, again, faster than most, when it comes down to just chasing characters who have moves that can create some distance, I feel like it's kind of hard chasing them down with this character. I believe there's also a bug going on right now with her shield as well that makes it easier to destroy, making it a bit harder to use. Now we have the melee hero who finds his way onto B tier. Now in my eyes, I have to put Kirishima a little bit lower on the list than I feel like many would expect. This character hits very hard. I mean, his Beta hits very hard, his Gamma as well is a phenomenal move to catch wake-ups, but also just hits super hard as well. His Alpha obviously hits hard again, but it's also very good as a stun. The entire time you're dragging them, your teammates can shoot the opponent as well, dishing out even more damage. Kiri's main weakness, honestly, is just closing the gap on people. His best move to use, I guess, is his Alpha, but his Alpha isn't exactly, like, super fast. Not to mention his movement's kind of limited, making shooting him very easily. Now, this is when the special action comes into play. You would activate special action and rush the opponent down to take less damage while doing so. However, because of a nerf they made to it very long ago, whenever you're hit with a move that triggers knockback, you're kicked out of the special action instantly. This means you're going to have to activate a special action more often than you would probably like, and also while you're activating it, while this animation is quicker, you are susceptible to being shot as well and taking damage for free. Now, this wouldn't be too bad if there weren't so many characters with moves that trigger knockback. You have Strike Deku with his alpha. I think all the quirk sets outside of Assault Shigaraki, actually, their alphas will trigger knockback. And then there's obviously even more characters who also have some way of knocking you back, prematurely ending the hardening. His alpha and beta aren't exactly the hardest moves to dodge either. You can dodge them simple enough by rolling. I just feel like not having a very fast way of closing the gap really hurts Kirishima as a character, especially in a game where a lot of characters do have very good mid to long range projectiles that they can use. And that weakness alone is enough to put him lower on the list for me. The second rapid is Mirio, who I'm putting right in S tier. I feel like despite being a rapid character with 250 HP, Mirio has some of the best survivability in the entire game. All of his moves are defensive in some way. His alpha becomes invincible once he charges it up. His beta, he's immediately invincible, and he can stay underground where he's safe for a long period of time as well. His gamma as well, it's an active shield. You have to go inside the bubble to actually hit him, unless you're playing a character like Ibara, who can hit him through it. His special action as well can be used to just stall time as well. He just has a lot of ways of stalling time and just keeping himself alive for long periods. Obviously, his movement game is very good as well. His alpha takes him decently far, not to mention he can use it, his beta, and his special action to go through structures to really just mix up opponents and lose them as well. And his damage is also phenomenal, especially with the fact that he can combo a lot of his moves. Now then, like the other melee characters, you can dodge Mirio's attacks simple enough by rolling. However, if you do get hit, Mirio can go into some very devastatingly hard-hitting combos. He even has a makeshift stun in the form of his alpha. The entire time he's doing this alpha sequence, his teammates can beam down the opponent he has stunned, and the opponent can't do anything about it. He can even very quickly get to his teammates by teleporting using his special action. Really, the main weakness I can only think of for this character is mainly just the fact that he has 250 HP, so it is easy to kind of blow up on this character if you're not expecting it. But again, a lot of his moves just give him iframes, allowing him to also just buy time for group hills as well. So I just feel like this character is just really, really phenomenal. Next, we have Momo, who I was honestly torn between A and A-, but I decided to go with A tier for her. Momo is honestly a very phenomenal character in the sense of just the utility that she brings to the team. She obviously has her special action that she can use at the start of the match to give herself a big backpack instantly, and she can also use the special action to create a res card if a teammate is dead, which is crazy useful. She can also launch cannons in the area that her team is fighting to provide her team with some cannon fire support. Her alpha is a very good get off me tool, being a stun that she can utilize. Her beta is her only movement option, however it's quite risky as it's very easy to roll it and hit her from behind. This character is another amazing character that shines indoors, using her shield to potentially block entry paths, and also her cannons have massive AoE, meaning they're basically guaranteed to land indoors. Now, the main weakness that comes to mind when using Momo is definitely just the vertical movement. She has none of that, meaning chasing opponents as well as running from opponents can be quite hard for her. Compress is next, and he magically appeared in A tier. Mr. Compress, in my eyes, is a very phenomenal character who just happens to have a weaker than normal early game. Early game, I never really think too much of a Compress when I see them throwing barrels. However, that all changes once they get to level 7. His trucks just cover a decent range, and with the stun lock effect of his alpha can lead to some very high burst damage. Not to mention his gamma is absolutely amazing, with it having hyper armor now, so you're more often than not going to be able to get it off, and he also has 2 of which at level 9. His reflect is also very good, being a very good answer to all the projectile characters in this game. He also can pick up his teammates with special action and teleport around with them, and if they're down, he can also revive them using special action, which is very useful. His main weakness, honestly, again, it's his early game, and also the fact that he's a very resource-dependent character. You gotta get the alpha to 7, you gotta get the gamma to 9, and not to mention his alpha, as strong as it is and as good as it is, it only stun locks people with shields. Once you guard break somebody, they're no longer stun locked, and they can usually get out of the way. Next, we have Mount Lady, who I put in A tier. Mount Lady has been nerfed numerous times, but I still find her a strong character, especially in the late game. Obviously, her main strength is her giant transformation, especially when the zone is very small. She's just going nuts with her gamma, you know, hitting people with the jump stomps as well, doing massive damage in a zone that's very hard to dodge her attacks in. Outside of her giant transformation, she has decent mobility. Her stun combo now does, you know, respectful damage. Nothing too crazy anymore because of the damage nerfs to the stomp and the alpha. She's just overall a very decent character. Nothing too crazy, but also nothing too weak. It's finally time for Strike Bakugo, who I'm putting right in A tier. Strike Bakugo, in my eyes, is probably one of the most balanced characters in this entire game. He doesn't really have anything overly too crazy. I mean, his damage is pretty good all across the board. He has good splash damage in the form of his grenade and also in the form of his howitzer. And he has decent mobility. He has 2 charges. They don't really take him overly too far. He can use his gamma as well at the end as well for a little bit more distance, but Overall, this character, I don't know. In my eyes, he's one of the more balanced characters we have, to be honest. Rapid Bakugo is going to be the first S tier character in a while. Now, since his release, I always thought Rapid Bakugo was an amazing character. He just had a higher skill ceiling. His character has some phenomenal movement, which can lead to him being harder to hit than other characters. His damage as well is very good. If you're landing the entire spray of his alpha, you're doing 112 a shot, which is very strong. And obviously, his combos with Beta into Gamma, for example, are very strong. Or the new Gamma into Gamma, for example, which does very big damage. He also has even more mobility charges to make use of, making it so that he has no problem chasing down characters or just getting out of situations if he needs to. Good attack power, good mobility. The main thing weighing him down is mainly the 250 HP that Rapids have. Now it's time to praise Ibara, who I have placed in A-. Shiozaki is another character that has a long-range insta-res, which is very strong for her. Not to mention all of her attacks can hit for over 100 damage, which is very, very useful. Even has a command grab that allows her to hit directly to the opponent's HP, doing massive damage, which again is very, very good. Her weakness becomes apparent when you realize, first and foremost, she has no mobility whatsoever. But even more than that, all of her moves leave her stationary. She can't do any of her attacks and keep moving at the same time. Instead, she'll get paused in whatever position she's in, and that leaves her open to be focused down. Now, despite this weakness, her alpha has some of the highest range in the entire game, so I feel like that kind of makes up for it, because she can just take fights at long range, where not being able to move while shooting isn't that much of an issue. Her beta and gamma also have hyper armor, which makes her very good for trading, and her beta and her alpha are also very good for catching wake-ups as well, because the hitboxes will linger. I feel like her strengths kind of just balance out her weaknesses, so I didn't feel right putting her in B tier, which is why I put her where she is now. Strike Shoto is next, and I put him in A-. So first things first, his alpha is one of the alphas that has the longest range in the entire game. Then we have his beta, which is very strong, but more importantly than that, it's just very good as a defensive tool. He can shoot through it, and most opponents cannot shoot back at him. His gamma as well is very good stun, allowing him and his teammates to burst down people very quickly. And it's also decent enough mobility, taking him very far. Where he falls short, obviously, his special action leaves much to be desired. His gamma as well, it's quite easy hitting him out of the startup, or just hitting him mid-slide and stopping him in his tracks. His beta as well, as I mentioned, it is a good defensive tool, but a lot of characters do have a way of either hitting through the ice wall or simply just going above the ice wall and hitting him. Now we have Tech Shoto, who I placed in A tier. Now then, Tech Shoto is honestly a very solid quirk set. His alpha is a little hard to use. It's not hit scan, and on console, because of aim assist locking onto where the opponents currently are, it can be hard to try to lead your shots sometimes on people who are moving. His beta feels great to use, it does a lot of damage, not to mention you can also use it to catch people's wake-ups, potentially. You can dodge the explosion by rolling, however. His gamma is also a very good tool, blocking projectiles and allowing him to rush in behind it as a defense. All his moves also have very good cooldowns, and despite not having mobility, the way his beta works kind of scares people from getting too close to him sometimes, out of fear of getting hit with the explosion. Now it's Toga time, and this one should come as no surprise. I'm putting her in S tier. Toga was by far the easiest character for me to place in this list. She essentially has unlimited potential. You know, she can use her gamma, get someone's blood. Suddenly now your team has an insta-res that they didn't have before, and she can do that over and over. The real strength of her gamma is the fact that she can use character special actions instantly, so she can always have an insta-heal ready. She can always just get an Overhaul's blood, and suddenly now she can instantly just heal her or her team if they need it. She can even do something as simple as just downing a Momo player, getting her blood, and just transforming into the Momo player over and over, and spamming her grab back over and over as well. And that's just focusing on the utility of the special action. Obviously, you can use the special action also for combos, transform into a character, and now suddenly you have a combo you didn't have access to before. Her base kit's also good. I mean, her gamma, auto-tracking, does decent damage. Her beta at close range also hits decently hard as well. Not to mention her beta is just a really good move for applying pressure, just constantly knocking down your opponents. Her alpha has good range, it can also rack up damage very quickly. And then obviously another benefit to her special action, it's a cooldown refresh. You use gamma, you transform, you de-transform, and suddenly you have your gamma back. This character just has a lot going for her and has infinite potential thanks to the transformations. Next up is everyone's favorite frog, Froppy, who I have placed at A tier. Froppy, in all honesty, is just a very good instant res character. She has very good mobility, she does very good damage as well with her combos that she can do. She obviously has her gamma as well to conceal her presence, so she can surprise people or just sneak away. Her instant res is another one that can be used at longer ranges. She's just a very solid character. Now we have Twice, who I put in S tier. So Twice was a character that I was actually struggling between S and A tier. The main reason I was debating it was because his gamma, not necessarily the strongest move when it comes down to mobility. It's very floaty, very slow, so it's easy enough shooting him out the sky while he's doing this. However, I think his raw power just kind of overwhelms that weakness. Between him and his beta clone throwing knives, he can very quickly just melt characters' HP down. Not to mention, obviously, he has his special action, which can lead into a snowball effect where he can just create numerous clones to overwhelm the battlefield. And while his gamma is good for movement, it's also a stun that can be used for some very good combos. This character can just create some very overwhelming pressure with his clone, his special action, and his gamma. All his tools just create a lot of pressure, and I feel like that just boosted his strength a lot on the tier list for me. The final rapid is Ochaco, who I put in A tier. Ochaco was another character that I was having some trouble with placing between S and A tier because honestly she has a lot going for her. She has 300 HP now, she has decent movement with her special action and her alpha. Her solo combo game is also very strong, not to mention her gamma can be used with her teammates to go into even more damage. Honestly, when it comes down to weaknesses, the main thing that comes to mind is just her gamma. The animation for casting it is kind of lengthy, not to mention if she commits to it and calls it down as well. That's a very long period where she's kind of stationary and easy to be melted. The gamma itself can also be evaded and punished with a well-timed roll. The final character is Overhaul, who I've placed in S tier. Overhaul has quite a few major things going for him. One of the main things is his grab, which he can use to get himself out of stun-like situations, as well as just heal himself as well as his teammates. But it's not just his special action he can use, he can also use his gamma to hit people out of stuns, or just hit out of any sort of knockback whatsoever. You can essentially just punish your opponents for hitting you. Now then, in my eyes, this is very clearly a bug. However, it's a bug that's been in the game since the season began, so I figured it was worth pointing out. The gamma on its own is also just a very strong move. It's a stun and can be comboed into itself for very big damage. His alpha and beta as well do very good damage and have very good range, with his beta being very good for bursting enemies quickly. Overall, his special action and his gamma being able to get him out of dangerous situations, as well as his special action being able to heal him and his teammates, and his damage just being very, very high, has him placing very high on my list. And with that, the tier list is complete. Again, this was all my opinion, and I'm sure many of you have different opinions on character placement, so let me know them down below. I just once again ask you to be respectful about it, and I really do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like. Once again, thank you all from the bottom of my heart for 20k subscribers, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Later.